Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of Visionary Talks by Governance Now. This is Kailashnath Adhikari, Managing Director, Governance Now, and it is my extreme proud privilege today to welcome none other than Mr. R.K. Misra, co-founder Yulu. Mr. Misra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
My first question to you, sir. The automobile industry is seeing a revolution of sorts, with electric vehicles. And Yulu has been the front runner when it comes to adopting new technologies. How are you seeing and embracing this change?
So I think electric vehicle, or rather say alternate energy adoption is some global phenomena. Started way back from Tesla, and then of course now it is going all across, whether it is a movement from fossil fuel coal-fired plants to renewable energy, solar plants, or even that was energy generation, then energy consumption. So from generation to consumption, there is a clear shift, and the shift is happening for very obvious and very important reasons. Climate change. Now, specifically coming, of course, Tesla's was initially not necessarily for climate change. Tesla was primarily from innovation point of view, and the man is a visionary. He came about, and now, of course, given what's going on in the world, not just the climate change is also becoming a major burden in terms of cost of energy, given what's happening in the world today. So I think that's one aspect. In case of India, our Prime Minister has gone and committed, a Paris climate agreement. We also, for reducing the greenhouse emissions, we also, Solar Alliance is chaired by us. So I think India is one of the countries who's at the forefront. We at Yulu take this mission very seriously. When we started our public bike sharing, we never even considered going with the traditional fossil fuel vehicles. We started with electric, unlike many other companies. So for us, this has been the core principles with which we have been working. Not just transport, but sustainable and responsible transport.
Okay. Now, if we talk about the last 2 years, we all know that they were unprecedented, with the world witnessing a pandemic, as a result of which there were production issues, material issues, and supply side bottlenecks as well. Bracing all these, Yulu continued with resilience. How was that possible?
I think more than that, there was a major demand issue, because initially we started as a bike for personal mobility. We are doing the first and last mile connectivity, taking you from the metro station to your office, from your home to office, office to home, school, college. Now with COVID coming, suddenly that demand became almost zero, because nobody moved anywhere. Now that was a big challenge. And when we started, we had 2-3 credible competitors in Bangalore and in other cities also. Unfortunately, most of them just couldn't manage it. And they somehow mostly reduced the operations, and I think almost everybody is shut now. That was a big challenge. So in our case, first, of course, when the demand went, it became from 100% to zero, because the lockdown was really crazy. Then we got thinking that if people are not able to move, they still have to live, they still have to eat, they still have to do things. Then if the people don't move, the goods have to move. They have to reach people. Now there was a situation in Bangalore, and then of course we worked with authorities. We realized that we told them, listen, by lockdown is all fine, but then lockdown doesn't mean people stop eating. People stop buying medicines. They need that. And you have stopped you have stopped individual transport, you have stopped buses, you have stopped autos also, you have stopped cars, you have stopped metro. How is it going to happen? So we work with the government, starting with Bangalore. So you'll be surprised that there was a time when only vehicle on the road was Yulu in whole of Bangalore. And that's how we were called the lifeline of Bangalore, and that got extended to Mumbai also to some extent, and Delhi, because of course Mumbai, Delhi, our operations are not that big. But almost, I think, became, and we were really, somebody needed a cylinder, gas cylinder, oxygen cylinder, we supplied that. And of course, the food and grocery and medicine and all that. And by the way, we are one company who did not fire a single employee. many of our guys who are at the field staff, who are taking care of the bike, the maintenance and all that, we made them the delivery boys. We said, no, you need to be employed. We are not going to fire any of you because as it is, COVID is a challenge. And in that, you lose your livelihood, which of course, unfortunately, many of our competitors could not manage because they had no business model, though they had to let go of a lot of people. So I think we are very proud of that.
Absolutely. Now, if you talk about the crude oil prices, they have risen through the roof. And again, now because of the geopolitical tensions, again, now we are seeing an upward trend. In such a scenario, would this be a catalyst for the Indian common man to shift to electric vehicles?
I think that's very obvious. You think from your pocket, correct? That's what the saying goes. And if you think from your pocket, obvious answer is you have to go electric. Compared with depending on what kind of vehicle you're driving. I mean, electric cost is 1 to 2 rupees per kilometer for two-wheeler like ours, correct? Now, with that in mind, of course, the question here is that does the country have that supply? Country doesn't have that supply. And country doesn't have supply because country doesn't make anything, unfortunately. Most of the bikes in the country are just, a hack of parts sourced from China or from everywhere else. We don't have a single manufacturing facility for the battery cells. We do the putting together, battery with beams, and cells still come from other countries, mainly from China, some from Japan and Korea. So yes, I think obvious answer is yes, and it's very fortunate that some people with bigger plans like Bajajes and Olas and Aethers and to some extent Hero Electric also, Okinawa, Ampere, they are working, but still by far the quality is not something which a user can compare with his two-stroke or whatever bike or scooter he has been using. And because at the end of the day, customer India is very price sensitive and quality conscious. Wants a very reasonably priced product, but does not want to compromise on quality. You give him a product which is not going to last, 10 years. He's not going to buy. Correct? And most of the products right now available in the market is not going to last even 3 years, forget about 10 years. Many of these products, unfortunately, India did not do any R&D to start with. We, our product, we designed. Unfortunately, there's no manufacturing facility, so we got it to our specification manufactured, large extent in China and other places, and battery and all was done in India. But we assembled, and a lot of components came from Bajaj. And that is, our vehicles are 3 years old, and they are being used not by one person, they are being used by 3 people every day. So it's a very rough use. Still, they are surviving and doing well. I can't say the same thing about many other Indian products which are available in the market. Of course, they're at a high end. If you have a 1 lakh and a half bike, of course, it will be a different quality standard. So I think for India, it is very important that if you are able to produce a high quality, reasonably high quality vehicle, not necessarily high speed. In India, somehow everybody is focused on high speed. If I'm a bike enthusiast and want a 120, 30 kilometer bike, I mean, that it is only, maybe a few thousand of, tens of thousands. But if you want to sell in lakhs and millions, you need a reasonably priced product, which is in the range of 40 to 60,000 rupees, and have a reasonably charging infrastructure, which primarily will come from shopping. A bike used by an office goer who goes and keeps in the office and brings back at home in the night, he doesn't need shopping because he can charge at home. And if he's a goer, he has a home where he has a plug. But how about those 15 million gig economy workers? They are the ones who are running around on the bike in the daytime, because office goers are only evening and morning. Now, these people essentially need something which is much more robust and infrastructure, and this is what Yulu is catering to. From my point of view, to answer your original question, yes, people will shift. But right now, the shift will happen when only the right fit product comes. We hope, Bajaj's product is coming to market for Yulu is making in a month or so for test. Full-fledged deployment will happen in a couple of months. And I think that we hope, and we have amazing product. and hope many other companies will come a product which is really appealing. Because it doesn't want to compromise on the look and feel, and it's still reasonable.
Absolutely. Now, if we talk about India's policy on electric vehicles, that's very progressive. But do you feel we as a nation have built that considerable infrastructure to suit the EV mobility? And when do you foresee India being 100% ready for such mobility? Do we have that kind of infrastructure, charging stations, or even that kind of concept that Yulu has? You take the bicycle from one end, like the West, leave it at another end. Has that infrastructure been built?
So 2 points. One, you said that India's policy has been very progressive. It has been very progressive but poorly thought. Let me explain to you how. We focused on individual customer. Okay, if you buy a car, I'll give you some free money. Correct? You buy a bike. So fine, I have 2 cars. I just want to look good to my friend because I'm a rich guy. I'll buy a third car which will be electric for my wife. Is that the purpose of government to subsidize the people's third or fourth cars? No. Now, even if I have a bike, if I have to decide between Honda Splendor or other Bajaj Splendor and an Ather, well, then I have a guy who's willing to spend $1.5 lakh, and I'll choose between the two. And then I'm a guy who has a place where I can say I don't need a charging infrastructure. So far, the government policy has been flawed. That's why offtake was very low. It was a discretionary purchase. It was a necessity purchase. Adoption will happen only when the purchase becomes necessity, and the government has not taken care of that. Just to give you an example, FAME 1 included the low-speed electric vehicles, which are 90% of the two-wheelers sold in India. And 100% of these are used by the gig economy workers. But then government removed the subsidy on these vehicles, which are low-speed vehicles, in FAME 2. Supposedly because of the lobbying by the manufacturers, because they were not making, they wanted to make quick money. They wanted to make 1 lakh bike. They did not make a 40,000 bike for low speed. Now government realized that. And by the a bike who's used by you and me going from home to office and coming back only, why does it need a charging infrastructure? Charging infrastructure is home. Same is with the car. Are you going to park your car in a charging lot, parking lot on a road and wait 2 hours doing what for charging? No. You either charge at home, or if you are working in a multinational or working in a campus or tech park, you will have a charging infrastructure. Because there will be plugs there. So this bogey, because people are not buying because there is no charging infrastructure, is false, because government so far has only promoted private electric vehicle consumption. And private vehicle consumption does not need elaborate charging infrastructure. Nowhere in the world it has. It has. Tesla is selling so many. But people charge at home and charge at office parking lots and malls. You don't need omnipresent infrastructure. And in Europe, it is charged on the road, because when you park in the night, there is one, instead of a parking meter, there is electric meter. You put there and do it. In India, the charging infrastructure is needed for the people who use it a lot. Who are the people? They are gig economy workers. They are traveling salesmen. They're the people who need the courier boys. Those are the kind of people, for them you need charging. And they cannot leave the bike even for 2 minutes without being used, because a delivery guy loses 20 minutes, he loses one delivery. For him, charging will not work. Swapping will work. And luckily, and we pushed for it and we explained to the Niti Aayog, and Niti Aayog understood it. Now the government of India announced a swapping policy and charging station and swapping policy in this budget. They realized that giving discounts and subsidy to the people who are going to use it only for personal use is not going to cut it. Neither the volume, nor it will solve the purpose. So I think government needs to focus on shared mobility and gig economy workers. Absolutely. And there will be huge intake, because whole India put together, there are 1.5 crore people there only. Correct? 15 million people. So this is something which essentially I would argue, and right now the government is going in the right direction. But charging infrastructure, except the highways, is not an impediment. In city, you can get charging infrastructure.
Is not an impediment when it comes to private
EV
consumption. Sure. Now, recently, a ride-hailing app accounted record number of two-wheeler electric vehicle sales in its first launch only, like within the first 1 day or hour. Now, do you see this as a positive sign of changing Indian consumer mindset?
Yes, absolutely. Because ride hailing is also potentially what? It's a shared economy.
Hmm.
So, I mean, real value will come. I'll tell you what. Government needs to say, okay, fine, Ola and Uber, listen, every year 20% of your fleet has to be electric. Because that is the best use of, because they are running whole day. They are running maximum miles. So change them because they are the ones polluting most. You and I go to office 10 kilometers, 16 kilometers, and one day they are running 200 kilometers per day. So this is what government should do. School buses is yes, because they run only 30 kilometer max on one way. Then they go and park whole day. They cannot be used for anything else. So unko kar do. And then you don't need too much of battery capacity. So cost will also not be very high. The regulated sector, taxi regulated, auto is regulated, buses are regulated. Correct? So their government should focus on making sure that these go electric, 5-year plan, every year 20%, and give them some incentive, some regulatory stick and monetary carrot. This is how you need to do for both of these guys.
Sure.
Now, as far as shared economy is concerned, this gig economies and ride hailings and autos and this all very easy. Just give them incentive on battery and help them put charging infrastructure, because that charging infrastructure needs in public spaces, every metro station, correct? On path, that's where you need it. You can't create in one corner of the city. Nobody will go there because they need to charge on the move. Correct?
True.
Every metro station, every parking lot, it should be mandated that you'll have to have a charging infrastructure.
Sure.
Let private sector do it.
Sure. Now, if we talk about Mr. Misra, let's talk about energy. Most of the nations, even India, bets big on sustainable modes of energy since years. But whenever recently, last year, we saw when a coal crisis came, we were totally handicapped. We could not depend on alternative sources of energy, how much ever we talk about. Do you see similar situation with respect to automobiles? That today we are talking about alternative sources of automobile. But if someday, conventional collapses and we are nowhere.
I think it's a very interesting point. It's a policy dilemma also. But please understand that alternate energy, unfortunately, is very cyclical. And it is like in a day also, is not round the clock. So you power in the daytime, but you have to store it somewhere to be used in the night. So for that, you have to think very differently. So whatever charging you can do in the daytime is fantastic. You do that. But then you really, like Karnataka is a state which is surplus alternate energy, correct? And if the Karnataka, for example, goes for hydrogen economy, hydrogen is nothing but conversion of one form of energy into something else. So hydrogen essentially should run alternate energy-led vehicles for the long distance trucks and all that. Because the infrastructure to create a hydrogen pump is very, very big cost-wise and also needs a lot of space. It is okay for the highways. And Reliance and everybody else is trying to do that. So convert. So if we can produce more and we don't have a way to store, convert to hydrogen and run your truck fleets on that. Now, as far as electric vehicles are concerned and the city thing is concerned, I think creating power through even a coal power plant away from the city and using that power in the city, if you don't have enough clean energy to fuel your transport, is still okay because you are reducing so much pollution in the city, which is choking our cities. Delhi and all that, you cannot breathe. And I think 30-40%, everybody talk about Parali burning and all that, but 30-40% at least come from these vehicles. So that can reduce. So actually, there is no black and white answers to your question. We are planning 200 gigawatt of solar power. I think must be done. But then when you create solar power, you have to find usage for it also. Correct? People are thinking about, Mr. Gadkari always talks about ethanol blending. That also needs to be done. That leads to 20% of our import bill. Correct? Now, solar, wind, nuclear. Nuclear is something which India should go really big. Look, why France is still okay and not worried about Russia cutting the gas, and Germany is really, really dependent on Russia because Germany shut off all their nuclear plants after Fukushima. Correct? So these are so India is still having a very high mix of conventional energy but the growth rate of alternate energy is very high. Correct? From nothing, India will become almost like 30 to 40% by in next 2-3 years. So I think that's the right trajectory. But you cannot link the two directly that, oh, we don't have alternate energy, then what's the point of having a battery-run vehicle? Because anyway, you are running plants on the coal. No. Because solar will come at its own time. But then right now, at least running electric vehicle is reducing the pollution in the cities. And that itself is a very big, I would say, a saving, both from the climate point of view and both from the money point of view.
Absolutely. Now, if we talk about, the demand for the entire sector, naturally, most of the people in India, because of affordability issues, they use the public transport. Now, but the pandemic has changed the way even a common Indian consumer thinks. Safety, hygiene, convenience, social distancing is now at the top of his or her priority. Do you believe that this has led to increased demand for automobiles, whether first hand or second hand?
Oh, big time. Just give me a bit. So I think not just the automobile, for example, especially I'll give you the clear example which we face. I mean, Yulu's demand has gone like so high. One of the people that we don't want to sit in an auto, we don't want to sit in a bus. Correct? And you provides first and last mile connectivity, so they may come maybe by metro or something, and then they'll don't want to go in auto. They're like, but you're right. All over the world, US, of course, because supply chain issues, you can't buy. In fact, second-hand cars are more expensive than new cars because there are no new cars available. But US is not the right example because anyway, it is a car economy. In countries like India, you're right. Public transport in India is also very fragmented, except in Mumbai, which has a reasonable network of metro and buses. No other city has a decent public transport. Now, in a place like Bangalore, hardly 2 metro lines. The nearest metro line could be 10 kilometers away. So nobody will go and have an auto to metro line and then take a metro, then again take auto from there to the office. So people end up taking their two-wheeler. Correct? Same is true with Pune, same is true with Hyderabad. Delhi and Mumbai, at least Delhi in case, Mumbai there's no space, no parking, so everybody has to use a local or whatever. But in Delhi, for example, you have around 365 metro stations.
Yeah.
Correct? And it is the largest network.
Yeah.
But still, the nearest metro station from your home, on average, is 3.8 kilometers.
True.
Now, with that kind of thing, you're not going to take a auto or shared auto you have there and those electric autos to go to metro station, first wait for the auto, then go to metro station, then take metro on the other side, whether it's Dwarka or Gurgaon, again wait for something. You will say, no, leave it, we'll take my car or my bike. Unless you fix this first and last mile problem, which is solo. Nobody wants to share anything now because of the COVID and all that. And which is and also affordable. That is where I think companies like Yulu really have to start. We are in DMRC, we just can't meet the demand. There's huge demand. And also, but there's the challenge happens that you have to have parking stations near where they live. You cannot be 3 kilometers away. So that puzzle needs to be solved. So you're right. I think that has really changed people's mindset, and a lot of automobile sales are happening because of that.
Sure. Now, if we talk about the fact that, there's a concept which is built of leasing passenger vehicles also these days.
Yes.
Earlier, only commercial vehicles used to be leased, that too at a very big scale by huge corporates who are there into logistics business. But now even a common consumer thinks that instead of taking a loan, a car loan on a product, taking a liability which has only diminishing value. It is not like a flat, it grows. The moment you take a car out of a showroom, the value diminishes.
Yes.
Now there are companies which even lease commercial passenger vehicles. So how do you look at this changing mindset, and what steps is it taking to cater to this demand? I mean, now today, even I feel that if I want to buy a car, why should I buy a car? After the loan is 5-7 years, I wish to change the car in 5-7 years. The resale value of the car is always lower than the loan amount outstanding. Why cannot I just lease the car? Why cannot I even, let's assume I want to have a Mercedes. Why can't I lease a Mercedes for 3 years and then give it back?
Absolutely. I think you're right. Earlier, companies used to list all their employees and senior executives. Now, individuals it's a business model innovation, which is good, but also there's a mind shift. See, in my generation, owning a car, and my parents' generation, nobody owned a car. My generation, owning a car was a status symbol.
Yes.
Either you had a car or you didn't have a car. And if you had a car, how big a car you had. Correct? But my son is in US and he refuses to take license. So why do I need a license? There is Uber there, which I can do, and car means insurance, liability, driving. Why do I do it?
Yes.
I sit in Uber and I do my work and I'm listening to music and I don't have to worry about. And at the end of the day, keeping the car, starting from parking, the petrol to license to liability to everything is done worth it. And in case of India, yes, you're right. Today, do I care what car my neighbor earlier I did? Oh, he has got a bigger car than me. Today, nobody cares because everybody potentially can afford any car if you are depending on what, socioeconomic status. And by the way, people are no longer living in houses. They're living house, whose house it is. But if you're apartment, your car is at the basement and you live up, nobody knows which is your parking lot. So nobody even knows which car you have. So even if you want to prove to somebody you have a fancy car, nobody cares. So I think there's a little bit of shift especially in bigger cities. There's a shift in the mindset. Yeah, I don't have to prove how big I am by showing my car size.
Absolutely.
And if at all I want, I can always rent it. I always can lease it. So now it's available. And overall economic value of a car, as you rightly said, is the moment from the showroom you come down 20% down, like depreciation in 1 hour is 20%. You take the car out of showroom and try to sell it to same showroom, the was 20% less.
Yes,
so
as I said.
Yeah. So I think you're right. And I think this is essentially, and by the way, when we needed the car, there was no Ola and Uber. Taxi guy will be, you have to go to one corner shop and try to get taxi. So convenience of having a vehicle when you need it, and also these options, the economic models, the business models have made it possible.
Absolutely. Now,
can you give me a second? Is it okay?
Sure.
Just a minute. Just. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So, you're right. It's a big change. It's a generational change. It's a change because of the socioeconomic as well as the change in how we consume,
how we look at a facility, a car.
Societal mindset change.
Do we look at a car as an asset or no? That's a thing now.
Or do we look at the car as a status symbol or no?
Or no, yes, absolutely. Now, electric vehicle manufacturers are facing component shortages with respect to the Li-ion batteries.
Correct.
Papers reported, reason being delay in shipments from China. Again, China is seeing a COVID wave. And also that the preference is given to Western nations, Europe, US. According to you, how big is this a deterrent to India's EV mobility future?
See, I mean, when there is a scarcity, you're always going to give to a bigger customer. Correct? Today, if there is a component shortage and you are an Apple versus tiny PC manufacturer, who's going to get preference? Because you will go to Apple only because Apple is the bigger customer forever. And if you don't give to Apple today, tomorrow will not come to you. Correct? Same is here. India is a very tiny market. India has no market actually. Yeah, so was 38,000 vehicles are sold. Market. We're talking millions being sold in China. As far as consumers are concerned, China is the biggest market. There's no other market anywhere in the world, by the way. Every other market is very, very tiny. So from that point of view, when the component shortage is there, so I think India is in the same boat as any other country. No other country is getting it because we are the ones who are doing it. We are completely dependent on China and we are waking up too late. These components are not so complicated. Electric motor, drivetrain, IoT. So, for example, Yulu does its own IoT. Only thing is, half of the components we don't get in India because we don't make any electronics in India, unfortunately. Completely blind spot for the government policy makers. It is aimed that we don't make the simplest of chips in India. In fact, even for about defense protection, we don't make it. I won't be surprised that anything in our defense equipment, everything is being spied upon by our not so friendly neighbors. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So this is something India has blundered both in battery as well as in electronic components. And there's no solution. I think this government has woken up and doing both semiconductor manufacturing as well as a battery. You saw that PLI scheme, Ola, Hyundai, Rajesh Exports and Reliance. They have been 15, and I think 5 gigawatt battery capacity. But surprisingly, none of these companies have any technology. They don't have a chemistry technology at all. Now, Hyundai will have it because they will bring the technology from China. But Ola doesn't have it. Ola has to now start R&D. And surprisingly, they have got 15 gigawatts. So I'm really wondering whether, how and why they will do it. I have no idea how Rajesh Exports will do it. Reliance, maybe they are talking and going to acquire some company and things like that. So these technologies are not developed. The chemistry is a pure science. It's not a right science. So you cannot become an expert in chemistry because battery is all about chemistry overnight. Now, if the chemistry is going to remain same, lithium ion, if China has 90% of the supply of the world, even if you have the chemistry, how are you going to get it? And a new kind of, lithium ion batteries, NMC batteries are now becoming difficult because of the supply issues that people are going to LFP batteries. Right? Lithium iron phosphate batteries. But then lithium iron phosphate batteries technology is not known to a lot of people in this country. And even if you get from some other country, there will be other issues. They will not give it because this has become a strategic weapon now. Now, India potentially has to, maybe our DRDO has certain technology, what I hear, but it is not commercialized. So it's not going to be easy. If the government continues its effort and keeps at it continuously for 5 to 10 years, hopefully we will reach to 1/20th of China in next 5-10 years. It's really, difference is so huge. And it is something which we need to start talking about openly so that we don't delude ourselves. Tomorrow, if China says, sorry, India, thank you very much, there will be zero electric vehicle in this country.
Sure. Now, towards my last question, how bullish are you on the India story? Do you believe that it has the ammunition to reach the $5 trillion mark economy?
Well, I think I'm not only bullish on India in the interview, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So I have a zero money abroad. This is my third venture, Yulu, and where I'm an investor. All my investments are in startups and otherwise in India. I work with the governments. I'm advisor to the government here. I work with Niti Aayog. I was the one who contributed to Smart City Mission. I wrote Karnataka's EV policy. And by the way, I came back to India in 1995 when nobody wanted to come back to India. I am an Indophile from very long. When nobody believed in India, I believed. So India is, I think, next 20, 30, 40 years are India's years. And it is fun to be in a country and economy which is growing. But the fun growth is a change and which gives excitement. You leave the land, you get up in the morning and sleep in the night, then you'll not see the difference. Because same routine. In India, there's no routine. And that's what development is. That's why startup culture is, because there's so many problems you have to solve. When you have a problem to solve, then there's a business opportunity. Correct? Yes. And when there's a business opportunity, there's economic growth. And Japan is stagnating, there's nothing to be done. So it's a very rich country. So it's a very country, but a not exciting country. So India is the most exciting country. That's why when I went to IIT, in my batch, out of 250, around, I think almost 203 of us went abroad. Not that we were all wanted to do PhDs and masters. Many of us hated it. We went abroad because there are no jobs here. But today, I was invited to my, I think 50th of IIT Kanpur, anniversary. And I asked a lot of kids, I asked this question. I think not more than 10% people are going. So from 90% going abroad to 10% going abroad, which shows that people who are capable, they believe that India has the best opportunity. India has the best prospects of not only economic growth, but also quality of life. Very important, please understand. With the same amount of money, you can have a much higher quality of life.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have my own kids. Whom my son works and gets very high salary in San Francisco, and he says, "Papa, zero savings because cost of living is so high." And he just finished his college and he's coming back. So you may not need to put there, but this is something which I am saying, and I told him, and he said, "I want to come back." I said, "Please, any day." This is a country which will provide you opportunities, which are so many. So this is something I tell everybody. A lot of my friends who say, "Okay, people who have left India long ago and not kept in touch, they will not understand, appreciate." But anybody who is in touch of the current India, I think, understand that India has huge opportunity. So yes. Why only 5? Why only 5 trillion? We will reach 10 trillion by maybe 20, 30, 35.
Absolutely. With that, thank you so much, Mr. Misra, for joining us on this episode of Visionary Talks by Governance Now. It was a complete pleasure understanding the entire EV landscape, the past, present, and future, and also the fact that India not only 5 but will reach the $10 trillion economy soon. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Good day and good evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.